Awesome. Thank you, Isabel. So as I said, Kate Rivet is going to be facilitating today's workshop. Kate is a UX designer. She works for Santerre and is also part of the leadership for the Brew City UX. So we are super excited to have her as well as the other members of the Brew City UX team that are here to support all of our 4M founders on their journey to creating amazing user experiences with their products. So Kate, I'm going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much, Maggie and Isabel, for putting this together, organizing it, bringing all of the awesome founders together. So welcome founders and welcome UX folks. Really excited for this time to kind of have all of you available. And as Maggie mentioned, we're going to have a bit of a presentation first, and this is a presentation of sort of UX for founders. And then after that, we'll have breakout time where we pair up founders with UX professionals, and we'll have some one-on-one or maybe not one-on-one, but like individualized support, depending on how many people we have of each group. So one thing, if you would like to, and if you can, go to participants, click on participants, and then find your own name in that list. And then click more and rename, and you can rename yourself and add UX at the end or add founder at the end. And that'll just help with putting people into those breakout rooms. So if you don't mind doing that, that'll kind of help figure out who should go where so that we have kind of even mix of groups. So, you know, if you can, again, it's clicking on participants and then rename yourself to put UX or founder at the end of your name. And if you can't figure that out, that's okay, or you can drop a line in the chat to see if someone else can help you out with that. But enough of all that, let me share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see the presentation. And just gonna get myself arranged a little bit more. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're doing UX for founders. A little agenda, we kind of already went over this, that we'll have the collaboration time at the end. A little bit about me. That's me going on a sea kayak in Lake Superior. When I'm not sea kayaking, which is most of the time, I work as a UX designer at Santerre. I've been at Santerre about 3 years, but I've been in the UX, UI, front-end development. So that's user experience, user interface design, front-end development field for about 10 years. I have an MS in human-computer interaction. I first designed and built a website in 1998, and there have been a lot of changes since then, but you know, it was about horses. But anyway, I am really passionate about user research, which is really what drives good user experience, and we'll talk more about that. I'm also into UI design and development, and usability, which is how you know, how well somebody can use and how useful it is to them, and accessibility, which is making sure that everyone can use your tools and everyone can access, including people with disabilities. And I work at Santerre, so just a few words about my company. We're a digital business and tech consulting firm with over 100 full-time people in product management, strategy, software engineering, quality assurance, user experience and design, agile training, and DevOps. So we have lots of consultants that help companies from startups like yours to very, very big companies to meet their goals when it comes to creating applications and tools. So now, if you can put into the chat a little bit about you, so especially looking for your product, your company name, if you'd like to share that. There we go. And your specialty or areas. So whatever you'd like to share about you and your company. And then also one thing you would like to get out of this session or learn more about. So go ahead and type that into the chat so that we can kind of get acquainted with each other. And thanks for changing your names to add your added founder or UX. That's great. That's very helpful. So thank you for doing that. All right. JIT Unitus edutainment app. Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, of course. Jill, delightfuller.com. Delight, joy, and positive noticing community. Very, very good. Cool. Hi, Isaac. All right, Matthew. Cool. Feel free to keep putting those in and you can kind of read those, but I'm gonna keep talking just to keep this rolling. But if you haven't, sent yours in yet, feel free to keep chatting and interacting in the chat while I go on. So I wanna talk a little bit about what and why. What is UX and why does it matter? Why are we here? So let's start with what is UX. So according to this definition that I like, which comes from Don Norman and Jacob Nielsen, who are two of the founders of the UX field in general. You can find more about them at Nielsen Norman Group or nngroup.com. User experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So we're not just talking about what most people think of, which is a screen or a website design. That does come into it, but as you can kind of see in this picture I chose, there's somebody who works at this company and a customer. They're both using like a payment app or a point of sale application, but they're also having an interaction with each other at the same time. So we can consider all of this as part of the customer experience or the user experience. And the difference kind of between those two terms is customer experience is usually used to refer to the whole experience of being the customer. And user experience is once you are a user of the product. So user experience sort of entails there being some product that people could be using. But both of these are so similar that I like this definition of user experience, which could be kind of interchangeable with customer experience. So thinking about it in that way also helps us to kind of take a step back from just thinking about like screens or prototypes or those kind of things that are sometimes deliverables of user experience, but they're actually not as important as understanding really your customer and how they feel and what happens when they use your product or interact with your company. So what is UI? And something you hear a lot is UX/UI. So these are interrelated concepts, but UX is user experience and UI is user interface. And so UI is user interface. And in this little formula that I took from Malika's article linked here is a fulfilling user experience plus a visually appealing user interface equals a satisfied customer. So if you look at the diagram here to the right, your product here is this dessert, but you need something so that people can eat it. So that's the interface, how consumers will interact with your product, like a spoon. So the experience is using the spoon to be able to eat the product. So how are your consumers going to be able to purchase and receive the product if it is something that is a physical product, or if it's something that's not a physical product? How are they going to receive it from you? That's all how you can think of the user experience and how it interplays with the interface. So the interface is what goes between the consumer and the product. So what else impacts the user's experience? A lot of things, actually. There's the branding, which is very important. Who is your company? How do people think about you? Are you playful? Are you serious? How are you going to talk to your customers? And that goes into the marketing. What are you going to use in order to find and reach your ideal customers? And the development or the engineering also impacts the user's experience. Are you going to have a well-developed, well-engineered app or product involved, or is it going to be based around something that already exists? That all plays into the experience that people are going to have with your company. So something I'd like to have you think about also is the product market fit. Product market fit is how well your particular product is going to serve the people that you consider your customers. And it comes out of 3 things to think about. Desirability. Do people want it? Is it desirable? Will people say, take my money? Or will you have to convince them that they want it? Viability. Should we do it? Does it make sense from a business perspective? Does it make sense for you in particular to offer this product or service? And then feasibility. Can you do it? Is it technically possible? Is it legal? Those are all feasibility questions. So, all of these put together and answering these questions about your product will determine and help you understand whether you have a product market fit. Because if you have good desirability, people want it, you've heard indications from the market that people are looking for something like this. If it's viable, you have found a way of a business plan that shows you how you can make money doing it. And if it's feasible, you have a development or execution plan to show that you can actually develop this product. Put those all together, you have a great chance of success, and because you've got product market fit. All right, so what's the value of good UX? Good user experience is a way for you to take care of your customers. You'll improve people's lives. You set yourself apart from your competition. And most of all, it feels good. So good user experience is a great business decision, but it's also a great human decision, because when you go back to your why do you want to start a company? Why do you want to put all this work into it? If your why has anything to do with helping others and serving others, which for most business owners it does, then you will want to provide a good user experience just as much as you want to provide a good customer experience if you have a brick and mortar store. So if you don't have a brick and mortar store, if you have some combination of channels, you can consider your user experience to be similar to providing good customer service. It's a conversation, it's your touch point with you and your customer and your opportunity to serve them. So how are we going to do it? And I am telling you that great user experience is within reach. And there are some things that I'm going to present to you that you can do that you don't need to necessarily even hire a designer to do. There are some things that it's a great idea to hire a designer for if you don't have that background yourself. But you can definitely get started and have even more value if you do decide to hire a designer by having thought of these things beforehand, so that you can present this information to your designer should you hire one. Or if you aren't in the position where you can hire a designer, you can use these tools that I'm going to present to you, and it will greatly impact your user experience. All right, so first I'll kind of go through a few of the books where I get my ideas, so that if you want to go through those, you can look them up and do your own research here. You may have heard of the Lean Startup. It came out a while ago, but it's still a really good resource for understanding that you don't have to do everything right away. You can build only what you need to right now, measure your results, and then make rapid pivots, and really have responsiveness to the market in order to continually improve and iterate on your idea until it's a really, really great idea. Another sort of way of thinking, or something for you to look up, is design thinking. And this came out of human-centered design, and the consultancy IDEO really developed this. It's around innovation that's based on observation. So it's really all about empathy, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, observing and listening to people. And so that you really can understand that, what their problem is, what they're trying to solve, and how you can help them. And so by empathizing with people, you can then define what problem you're going to solve very specifically, and have ideas around that, and then create a prototype how you would solve this problem. So a prototype can be very low fidelity, and with design thinking, sometimes a prototype is not even a computer program at all. It could be a concierge service that you would later automate. So you could, let's say you have a company idea that you want to match people up with somewhere that they could go to do their work and study with, that has Wi-Fi. You would be able to, kind of do this by calling people and asking, if they have Wi-Fi and stuff like that, and then letting people know before you ever built any software to automate it. And by doing that, you can validate whether it's a good idea. So that test is a really important step. Like, is it a good idea or not? So it's all around observation. And then we get to Lean UX, which is based on Lean Startup. And this is a type of UX that is really, it's like made for the startup world, because you design just enough to build. You don't have to overinvest in your designs. So you can use whiteboards, paper, just keep it very sketchy. And you don't have to create like high fidelity clickable prototypes or anything like that. You just create what you can, enough to understand and test, and then move quickly. And usually Lean UX can go along very well with Agile, and you would have cross-functional teams. So you would have designer working directly with a developer to create the application itself, rather than to create like a demo that then gets handed off to a developer. So it's everybody working together on small teams, and you get user feedback right away. So as fast as possible, you put your work in front of somebody and find out if they would use that, or what would make it better for them. And so you sense and respond. You do a little bit of work and you check the results. So small amounts and then testing so that you can make those small pivots. And you want to do lightweight, valuable research, which means don't spend all of your time kind of creating like a big research project that needs a lot of budget. Just ask people. Just say, would you use this? Or what? How could I make this better? Or if you were, if you were my customer, what would you do if I showed you this? And just get from as many people as possible, ideally people who are like your customers, information that will help you improve your ideas. And Lean UX is all about build, measure, learn. How do you make the best products? You have to use collaboration, feedback, and revision. So build means, create something. Could be a drawing, could be a full website, whatever you can. And then measure, figure out some way to put it in front of somebody and ask them questions about it. And then learn, what did you learn from doing that? And then adjust what you built. So it's about getting it out in the market as soon as possible and adjusting from there instead of waiting a long time before releasing. And the idea of a minimum viable product, or MVP, is something that goes along in this world, where you can ask, what's the least I need to do in order to learn something? So that means that you don't necessarily have to think about, oh, it's going to take me a year to develop my product. What's the least I need to do in order to learn if this idea is viable? So that could be talking to customers of your competitor, or it could be doing surveys. It doesn't have to be an application or a piece of software. And that gives you the opportunity to pivot. So you can, change direction, change your business plan. You can change things because you haven't over-invested in one idea that is based on assumptions that haven't been validated. So you validate as much as possible in order to, build your picture of not only your customer, but your competitors, the marketplace, the product market fit of what you're working on. All right. And continuing to move right along, tools, getting you geared up for user experience design. I am not going to talk about design tools or Adobe or anything like that because it's really not that important. It's kind of like the thing that people focus on a lot, but you don't sell pictures of your application. If you need to make a pitch to a client or a customer and you need kind of screenshots or mock-ups in order to do that, that's something you might consider hiring somebody to create. But for founders, the biggest tool, and I think this is the most important slide in the deck, is research. So do your research. It is going to pay dividends, I promise you. The biggest mistake that I see people make is to make assumptions and not validate them. It comes back to bite you. So all of those things that kind of nag at you that you say, but do people do this? Will people want this? Write all of those down and ask yourself, how can I answer that? And so some of the best ways to answer it are to talk to your customers. Just get out there and ask them. Ask if you can buy them coffee or do a quick Zoom call with them. They don't have to be your current customers. They could be people that you want to serve. So do an interview, a casual interview, and just ask them questions. What are they doing now to solve their problem? What would make them change? You don't have to pitch them at all. And in fact, it would be better if you don't give them a sales pitch, but just try to learn and ask them how, what are the biggest problems that they face. And what would be, if a great question to ask in interviews is, if you had a magic wand and you could fix anything about your business or how you do X, whatever's related to your area, what would your magic wand do? So that kind of question will tell you what your ideal customers are, really struggling with. And if you can solve that for them, you will get raving fans. You can do surveys as well. Send out email surveys, offer somebody, a gift certificate or something, or even just raffle off one gift certificate to all the people and choose a random winner. But ask people on your social media or your LinkedIn if they'll just fill out a 5-minute survey for you. And then from the results of that survey, you can ask people like, I was really interested in what you put in the survey results. I wondered if I can pick your brain for 15 minutes on a phone call. So doing that research is going to be super important. I know it can seem scary to reach out to people like that, but just remember that people actually love to talk about themselves, and especially if you have an attitude of just being curious and grateful, people really enjoy doing that. So I encourage everyone to do that kind of research. Another kind you can do is market research. So if you go to websites like McKinsey, Pew Research, and there are other ones out there as well, you can find out quantitative data like what percent of people are struggling with childcare during the pandemic, or whatever you're wondering about, like how big is your market, and what can you focus on? What kind of words are people using to talk about it? You can use that kind of research to also, you can put that into your marketing material by saying, 30% of people have this problem, and this is this kind of solution for it. So however you want to incorporate that, that can be a good social proof to help people understand that that problem is common and they're not alone in having it, but that you have the solution. And then you can do competitive analysis. So stealing something from Joe, when he did a talk recently for Brew City UX, he said, you can use the template, we are the blank for blank. So if you are, 4M, maybe you would say we're the masterclass for startup founders. So you can kind of fill that out for your own company, and that'll help you understand kind of how to market and what the positioning of your company is. Another one similar that you could fill out is, we are the only blank that blank. So that could be something like, we are the only ice cream company that exclusively uses oat milk. I don't know. So you can fill that out and make sure that you can say that about your company so that you can position it and market it to people. Something else you can do, kind of a sneaky piece of research, but it's totally legal, is pretend to be a customer and call up somebody who is your competitor and talk to their customer service and just find out what it's like to be a customer of someone else who does something similar to you, so that you can understand what people are going through. So, just give it a try and talk to people and see, what other competitors are doing. And then you can say, oh yeah, I want to do that, or I want to let people get away from doing this kind of, having to go through this kind of thing. So yeah, do your research 100%. This is going to really serve you. All right. Something else I would recommend is to tell a story. Who is your ideal customer? What is their ideal experience with your company? And how will using your product or company improve their lives? because if you don't know this, it's going to be hard for people to understand it themselves. So telling a story is going to be a great way to just sort of get it clear in your own mind and understand what's going to be important. And then you'll put that into, when you have this story, you'll be able to make those decisions when it comes to creating your app or your website, because this story will be clear to you. And if anything goes against this story that you've written and the ideal experience, you'll know and you'll say, this doesn't fit in with my ideal customer's story. And you'll be able to address that. So we're going to take a minute to do a quick exercise. So it's, you can write down on a sheet of paper or type it into a notes app. So just put for your company, and you can absolutely put this in the chat if you'd like to share it as well. But we'll just give you a second to fill out this template by adding the right side blanks, filling that out. So once upon a time there was a, be specific. So say somebody who, a manager of 4 people who struggled when it came to knowing how to line up work for their reports, until one day they found our awesome application. And from then on, what happens? How are they affected by their interaction with your company? So we'll just take a couple minutes here to do this.
So here's an example. Once upon a time, there was a founder who struggled when it came to solidifying their idea and pitching it to others, until one day they went through the Forum Tech Incubator, and from then on, they could pitch you their ideas in 5 minutes flat.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah, try to jot down at least the template. You can always adjust it later. But then you have the basic structure of a once upon a time story for your company. And then you can, say like, how you can adjust it afterwards. But yeah, does anybody else want to share their story?
Don't be shy, it's a safe space.
No pressure, but you can feel free to share if you'd like to.
I'll try this, Shavon.
Awesome.
Okay. So once upon a time, there was a little girl who struggled with having access to money, housing, and resources until one day she came upon Secure Bridges. And from then on, she felt financially stable.
Amazing.
Love it.
That is a great story, Siobhan. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Anybody else feel like sharing?
I can go.
Sure.
This is for Unitas. So once upon a time, there was a school teacher who struggled to have an organized content when it came to teaching diversity and inclusion to the kids 4 to 9 years of age. Until one day, she heard about our solution Unitas, which has pre-packaged content to teach diversity and inclusion around different countries. And from then on, that school teacher was a happy customer to teach diversity and inclusion.
Beautiful. I love that story. Thank you so much. Legit. All
Yep, the
right.
story is good. We are just now working on how to get it to life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the next step. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jet and Shavon. So hopefully if you didn't get your story written down, you can kind of write down the outline and work on it later on. And we'll move on, because then something you can do once you have that story to further move from, you know, that idea of how you're going to improve someone's lives to what you're going to actually build and what the user experience is going to be. Journey mapping is a tool to do that. And this is something that you can do. It doesn't have to be beautiful. You can write it on notebook paper. So this is a tool that I would, in this example, comes from nngroup.com, and I would encourage you to look up examples of journey map that you could just Google journey map, user journey map, and you'll find them, or customer journey map. And it's a tool to empathize with and understand your customer and identify points of tension or points of discomfort where they're not having a good time. And you can obtain clarity on what your interface needs to be able to do. So this journey is usually going to be either from when they first become aware of your company to when they convert to being a customer, when they are paying money or doing, you know, something to sign up or become a user or a customer. Or it can be a journey from when they sign up to when they successfully accomplish their goal. So it's up to you, whatever you think it's going to be the most useful for you. You can use either way, but you want to walk us through in specifics what the journey is, what the user has to do. So start by just jotting down all the things that someone has to do to get from point A to point B. So in this example here, Jamie needs to switch her mobile plan. So we start with, at the top, just a little bit about this user, this person. You just make it up, and what she's trying to do. And the expectations are what her or his expectations are of this process that they're about to get themselves into. Then you have the stages, which you can do that last after you jot down steps, but probably the way to start is to figure out what these steps are. Like, first, review current plan, second, define parameters for new plan, and then divide those into the different steps. And then think about and empathize with this person and think about what they might be thinking and how their emotions might be. So this line shows like they're feeling good. And then if it goes down, they're feeling bad. They're not feeling as good. So, and this is because as people are using an interface or as they're purchasing a product, our emotional states are going to go up and down depending on kind of what thoughts we're having, what feedback we're getting from the product we're using. So, you know, you're just imagining what somebody is going through, really empathizing with them and trying to see what's going on in their head. And doing that and being really real and truthful and realistic about it is going to help you to set up your screens and your experience in a way that supports them at every step of the way. Because if you know from your research that at a certain point in their journey, they have apprehensions and maybe they don't know if they want to do it or not, you can support that by saying, hey, we know this is hard, so, you know, here's some support. You can chat with us, or, you know, here's some facts that you might need to know. So that's why to do a journey map and really empathize and understand what people need at each stage so that you can provide it. And then at the bottom, you can give the opportunities that you have, like maybe to put customer support in via text messaging, and the internal ownership and metrics. this would be where you figure out like, what are you actually going to do? Like, I need to hire a marketing person to, you know, to handle this, or get the wording right, or, you know, whatever needs to actually happen, or metrics that you want to include in there. So as a journey map, doing this, you'll figure out at the very least what steps need to happen. When you have those steps, you have a better idea for going to the next phase, which is drawing out what your user interface could be. So this is wireframing or prototyping. And this is what most people think about when they think of user experience. And the main thing that people, I think people should know about this is that you could stay what's called low fidelity. And that means it doesn't have to look perfect. In fact, it's better if it doesn't at this point. So draw it on paper, draw it on a whiteboard. You don't need to use any kind of special program. Just draw it with whatever you have. You just want to visually explain your thinking. Draw, you know, if you have a phone app, draw a bunch of phones, just a rectangle, and then put a couple words, a couple rectangles inside to just indicate what people could do on each screen, what happens step by step. And keep it simple. So think about it just as a conversation. You know, you can just, if you're not a drawer, that's fine. You can just kind of say what somebody would encounter, what kind of text they would see in the app at that stage. And then get feedback on it. That's really important. So talk to somebody about it. It doesn't have to be a customer, but that's great if it is. You could talk to your fellow founders or 4M people and get feedback in that way, or get feedback from friends and family. But it's important to show it and try and explain it to somebody else, because nobody can figure it all out. So, you know, even professionals, we have to get feedback from each other. No one can kind of hold it all in their head. There's always something you don't think of. So get that feedback and just try to improve it however you can.
Hey, Kate, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So for this customer journey map, the way you had explained for this story, Jamie's story, so there was definitely that the person needed to compare, negotiate, and select the plan. So those were the 4 buckets in which we could put the details. But for example, when we are designing an app, right, where we want, the teachers would have selected the app, and then the journey is about the kids who will go through that application to learn the diversity and inclusion. So in that time, like, are these different steps like compare, negotiate, select, they will get changed. Is that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So you can have these stages be whatever makes sense in that situation, like for the situation. So if it's the kids that are using the app, you know, Jumping Jamie would be one of the kids, and it would be, this kid needs to access the curriculum, you know, and then you first like figure out what the steps are, like do the, you know, and it doesn't have to be 8, just like jot it down, any number of steps. And then once you have them jotted down, figure out like, okay, this first stage is kind of where they're, you know, and then think of a word that means that. And you don't even have to call it something like that, but this just kind of helps in figuring out like, okay, there are 3 stages, or there are 5 stages, or whatever it is, you know, where as somebody moves through this journey. Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
Great. All right, so another thing that you can do is a user flow diagram or a wire flow. And this is an example on the left that I found at Career Foundry. And so this is really similar to what I was just showing with kind of the wire frames, but this is where you actually connect with lines, how people go from one screen to another. So this is the next thing that you need to do. or might like to do as you're figuring out the user experience of your application. So once you're at this point, you really are where you can start developing. And actually you can do a lot of this while development is in progress. So, you know, while people are working on one area, you can make user flow diagrams of other areas. So you do this, the happy path is usually where people start, and happy path means if everything goes right, how does somebody move through the system? If they're, you know, they don't have questions and there's no error, you know, so start there. That's just a great place to start. So once you do the happy path, then you can start thinking about like, okay, well, what if they put, you know, what if they're in Canada, or what if they put the wrong, you know, number of items or something like that. Like then you figure out all of that sort of unhappy path. But first, do the happy path. That's just a great place to start. If nothing goes wrong, how does somebody move through the workflow? And you also do this to document the user workflow so that you have a clear idea of what it's supposed to do, or you can hand it to a developer to build it. But you can keep it low fidelity. It doesn't have to look super polished. You know, at this stage, it just doesn't have to. You really just want to know how people are going to move through it. And this can be dynamic. So if there's a number of different buttons that somebody could push, you can show what happens if they push any of those buttons by drawing arrows to different areas. And look at this, check out this NN Group article. And I will find a way to share this slide with you later, these slides, so that you can click on all the links. But yeah, there's more info online about user flow diagrams for helping you figure out what people should be able to do for your user experience. A final thought here, what I would like you guys to take away from this presentation is that it's all about empathy. Just think about what it's like to be your customer and relate to them and learn about them. And if you do that, you kind of can't fail, because if somebody doesn't like your product, that's okay. You know, maybe it's not for them, but it also could be that, you know, once you empathize and understand them, maybe if your product is a little bit different, it could include them. But by empathizing with them, you can sort of figure this out. And, you know, by empathizing, you don't feel as, you know, as hurt if somebody prefers a different product. You more just understand like, well, okay, this person, because they have this specific situation or need or background, that's why they prefer this other product. And then you figure out, you know, if you want to kind of go after them, or if you're like, you know what, this other type of person, or, you know, that's who I really want to serve. So you don't have to try to serve everybody. But by empathizing with people, whether they are your ideal customer or not, can help you kind of see that and understand it. And it'll solve a lot of problems for you when it comes to user experience. So, you know, if you have any, if you're not used to empathizing, it can be kind of difficult, but one of the best ways to do it is to just talk to people and ask questions, because, you know, learning about somebody is a great way to empathize. A couple of resources here before we wrap up, just how you can find out more. These are some of the books I recommend if you'd like to learn more about user experience design. Don't Make Me Think is the #1 book that I recommend, especially for non-designers, for learning about how to create products that people love. Sprint is a great resource for startup founders, especially because in 5 days, you go from an idea or a problem to a prototype, a design. So that's something that you can get that book and get together with some of your stakeholders and solve these problems together. and then Lean UX, which is more focused at UX designers, but has a lot of great ideas for improving user experience in it. And some online resources for you. And again, I will figure out a way to share this so you can get all the links. But I did mention Nielsen Norman Group before. Usability.gov is also a great resource. It's from, created by the government, and Laws of UX is a great one. If you're the type of person who wants to know all of the why behind it, Laws of UX is awesome for that. And UX Planet just has a bunch of articles. So feel free to connect with